Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock and we are going to get started here today. So I see a lot of folks joining, so that will continue to be the pattern here over the next few moments, but we will recognize everyone's busy day, even in webinar land. It seems like it's busier and busier back to back. We meet this way, but it's been really, really valuable to keep us connected. So thank you for joining us today. This is our 5th in a series of webinars for small business, navigating the impacts of COVID-19. I'm Barbara Coffey, Director of Economic Initiatives for the City of Tucson. And what I'd like to do is spend the first half of our time together hearing from our guest speakers, and then we'll have time for additional questions and answers with all of you to round out our hour. So feel free also to enter your questions in the chat box as we go, and that way we can get those answered with the individual speakers, and then we can also follow up at the end of our time with all the questions. And any topic is okay. So again, feel free to try to send your questions, and we will do the same and try to get the right answers for you. And if we don't do that here, we'll certainly do some follow-up. We will ask all participants to stay muted since we have a large number of attendees, and we will record this session and make it available for you tomorrow. We usually have it posted in the early afternoon, and a link would be available on our website at connecttucson.com. So let's get started. I will start by introducing Ian Roark. Ian Roark is Vice President of Workforce Development and Strategic Partnerships for Pima Community College. He works with internal and external stakeholders to respond to workforce needs of our businesses and industry, and guides the college's alignment to the economic development priorities of the region and the state. He leads the Workforce Development Division, a phenomenal team, I understand, and know many of them, those talented leaders and practitioners serving over 6,000 students in training, certificate, and degree programs annually. So Ian, welcome, and I really love it if you can share briefly about the state of Pima Community College, so to speak. How are things at the college? What have you had to do to change in the way you do business? What are some of the things that would be helpful for employers to know as it relates to training programs there, and anything else that we've been having to do and that I know you've been managing full-time during this pandemic? So Ian?
Barbara, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for the partnership of the City of Tucson Economic Initiatives, you and your staff. It's been great to work with you in this time when so many small businesses, as well as the workers whom they employ, need all of us to come together and be here for our community. The college, like everybody else, has been was really caught off guard by the severity in terms of the rapidity of the shutdown. And so it came rather quick. And of course, most in the community know that we are not having our classes meet face-to-face in this time of social distancing, like most other education institutions in the state, and I dare say across the country. We, in a very rapid fashion, moved all of our thousands of classes that were occurring face-to-face to an online virtual format for the remainder of the semester. And so it's a great testament to our faculty and to our staff, to our IT folks, and to our Pima online department for helping everybody make that transition. There are, of course, a lot of courses and training offerings that we are not able to do in a virtual fashion, and you can imagine what those are: finishing out a nursing program, finishing your firefighter training program, or becoming an aviation technology technician or an automotive technician. You cannot do that in an online format, so those courses have been paused, and should social distancing restrictions lessen in the summer, we may be opening back up some of our training opportunities on basically a prioritization on what the community would need. So that would entail things like nurses, like firefighters, EMS professionals, HVAC technicians, transportation and logistics, et cetera. So we are we are monitoring the situation starting in the summer and moving into the fall in terms of what our operations will look like. In that period of time, of course, we're working closely with Arizona at Work, Job Path, City of Tucson, Pima County proper, Goodwill, CPLC, and other partners to ensure that we are providing the necessary wraparound support services that many of our students need at a time when they themselves may have not been prepared for this virtual environment. With your leave, I've prepared a small PowerPoint to go through what this looks like moving forward and what we can do to help people now.
That would be great. Absolutely. There we go.
So this should be up on your screen. So basically, it's about meeting the needs of the working learners and businesses in a post-COVID-19 world. And we've really had a lot of strategic conversations, even prior to COVID-19, about the future of work and about the future of education accordingly, and our role in helping both businesses and workers in the future of work. And what you'll see from this is our game plan really isn't changing, but the pace at which we implement that plan definitely is going to be. And here's why. We had all of these trends occurring prior to the onset of COVID-19. Industry 4.0 and the impact of technology and learning and working was already occurring at an extraordinary pace. As many who are listening to this podcast know from Dr. Hammond and the other schools business work there, that we were already predicting that in Pima County over the next decade or so, 40% of jobs were going to be massively impacted by automation as it was. And this was prior to COVID-19. And upwards of 1/3 of jobs in the entire US was going to be either displaced or revolutionized due to automation. In Pima County, we've also seen the birth dearth. Due to the last economic recession, birth rates started declining in Pima County at about 2010 at an extraordinary rate. And every year, the number of high school graduates, or what we call emerging workers, ages 16 to 24 is an official worker category, that actual number of emerging workers has been decreasing on an annual basis in Pima County since that time, and that is even prior to, of course, COVID-19. And then the third major factor that we saw was the blended occupations, things where a linear training program no longer fit the bill. So to become an automotive technician or an aviation technician, you now needed a certain degree of computer programming in order to understand the Internet of Things and the interplay between the programming and the actual mechanics. Or automated industrial technology program, which was meant to fill a gap in manufacturing in Pima County of technicians that needed both the mechanical engineering skills, the electrical engineering skills, as well as a base IT programming knowledge. So those used to be 3 separate programs, all converged into one. And finally, an uptick in work-based learning up to and including apprenticeship models. And then competency-based learning, which is because we have predominantly working adults due to these declining birth rates. The need to allow people the opportunity to demonstrate what they know when they know it, instead of enrolling in classes and training programs that potentially could just be a lot of review and things that they really don't need anymore that they already knew and can demonstrate in the workplace. So these things were already shifts that were underway at Pima Community College in response to these larger factors. So we were already in the process of virtualizing our classroom, and in many instances, looking at virtualizing our workplace. It's been interesting that many of our office locations, we've moved entirely online or virtual since the onset of this, and really in many ways, we've actually found that we're even busier and we're able to do more from home than we ever thought before. And we know that many businesses are experiencing that same awareness, both the positive impacts of that as well as the social and negative ramifications of that. But the blending of working and learning at the same time. As Pima Community College, we were already moving forward with apprenticeship models and became the first community college in the state of Arizona to be able to sponsor apprenticeships start and finish, which means design and run the entire apprenticeship in partnership with employers, not just provide the education and training. We also were focusing on programs of study that blended sectors, industries, and occupations. And then career lattices instead of pathways with stacks, starts, and stops, knowing that people would change careers and that they would be able to take skill sets from one career and apply it to entire whole new jobs in others. And then increasing our non-traditional offerings. So the takeaway of all of this is that we view the COVID-19 as an accelerant for change in all of these domains, not really changing the game plan at all, just helping it happen faster. Many are already aware that we have been focusing these activities through the Center of Excellence paradigm, including located at the downtown campus for our applied technology programs. And we're happy to report that those construction programs are still moving forward as scheduled. Just a quick tidbit on things we were already doing pre-COVID that matched this. Prior learning assessment, and this website, of course, is going to be there again after this presentation, pima.edu/prior learning, is where already prior to COVID, we were offering the opportunity for working adults to apply the skills that they already had in one career toward their program of study, perhaps in a different career. And in this time of mass unemployment, there may be an opportunity for people who are seeking either to enhance their current career track or perhaps jump to another career to look at their skill sets, talk to us at the college, and see how we can start you in a new program of study, but not at the very beginning of it, at a place that meets you where your skill is. With our applied technology program, in partnership with Design with Caterpillar, but now open across the board to other engineers, was an example of how we are working with working adults to design programs with their employers or for them that meets their skill set to advance in their career, but not necessarily with a certificate or a degree. In this case, this was an 8-week training program, once a day for 8 weeks, so a total of really 8 days. And finally, with blended occupations, the opportunity to work with technology companies and other industry leaders to look at what do we need to do to prepare for automation. We already know from our research and data that many people will go back to work for the employers that unfortunately in these hard times had to furlough them or to, in some cases, even release them. At the same time, we also know that what we don't want to do as a college is prepare people for reemployment for another wave of automation that's going to displace them again. And so in alignment with the data that's coming out of the Workforce Investment Board and the research paper that they sponsored through Eller, are looking at how we can retool our programs to make sure that people are not just employable now, but they remain employable when the next wave of displacement comes due to automation. An example of this is what we're working on right now in partnership with 6 other community college districts in Arizona. Pima is proud to lead the statewide implementation of the Google IT support certification. We were working on this pre-COVID, but now with all of the displaced workers, we know that this is now crucially important, and here is why. What you're doing is we are able to offer a self-paced training program in the Google IT certificate through a totally virtual environment, where any dislocated worker, in partnership with Pima or enrolling through Pima Community College, can sign up at this training program now. They don't need to go to a physical Pima site. They will not need to go to any other site, except for perhaps if they're going to be funded by our partners at Arizona at Work, they would of course need to go to the Arizona at Work locations or through their virtual services. But in this certificate program, we are providing wraparound virtual support, which will be provided virtually and digitally by the college with our student support specialists, and in some cases, our community partners such as JobPath. This non-credit training program, because it's non-credit, means it has fewer barriers to entry, but it then stacks into one of our IT certificates and our cybersecurity degree if the worker indeed wanted to continue their program of study to a higher paying job. And we are doing this in partnership with, it's a seven community college districts. That 7 does include Pima, so it's 6 others, 7 including Pima, including 4 to 6 of Maricopa Community College District's community colleges. And then what we are doing with this program is looking at this design, which is totally virtual, stackable, non-credit and short-term, but stacks into a longer program should the worker want it to, and being listed on the eligible training provider list at the state and local levels as a way to meet the needs of working learners in this time of rapid displacement. Other items that we're working on right now in preparation for when social distancing restrictions are released per the phased approach of the state. We're looking at increasing rapidly our apprenticeship models, including both our registered model through the federal government and the state, as well as our competency-based model in partnership with employers in the manufacturing sector in particular. We're also looking at increasing the numbers of upskilling and talent planning design opportunities, including reducing costs for online education for employers who will be providing online education to their employees through tuition reimbursement assistance. And then finally, with our Small Business Development Center, they presented earlier, but just to remind everybody that the Pima Community College Small Business Development Center is hard at work, working with the Chamber of Commerce, with the City of Tucson, with Startup Tucson, and with other partners to ensure that businesses are getting the direct support and relief with the complicated programs that are coming out at a rapid pace. And those include disaster relief loans, PPP. Right now, of course, that is stalled, but once that additional funding, which is projected to be released, is released, Ellen Curtin and her team will be ready there to support our small businesses, as well as the EIDC, or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So just wanted to remind people that the Small Business Development Center is hard at work as well. Just for a quick contact point, there's lots of different numbers, but to make it easy for now, we will give you the workforce@pima.edu email. There are a whole host of individuals who are ready there to answer that email and direct you to the correct department should you need it as a learner or as an employer needing help figuring out what to do in this time. The Small Business Development Center's phone number is 520-296-4580, and that number is being answered even in this time of physical facility shutdown. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ian. And I'm glad you brought that up about the Small Business Development Center housed there under your team there at Pima Community College. I think they do outstanding work, and I always want to reiterate that that business counseling is free and it's available, right? And it's sometimes just so important to have someone to talk to. I'm curious if you have seen the activity level, how that's going, if you have a feel from Ellen and her team or how they're handling all of that.
So they jumped to upwards of 20 to 25 calls a day. The numbers are still coming in. That team is so awesome. It's been a lot of volume and a lot of pain for many of these small business owners who are clients or who have worked with the SBDC perhaps to build their business to where it was, but because of circumstances that are entirely out of their control or anybody's out of control, are having to deal with people's lives and to make those difficult decisions in the short term to hopefully keep the business sustainable for the long term. And that's been the amazing thing that we've seen come out of this is how the humanity of this is so important. And in each and every single exchange that we have, whether it's on the workforce side with somebody who just lost their job, or on the business side for somebody who didn't want to let their people go or making difficult decisions, how we just have to keep in mind front and center that people are here at the college and all of our other partners, and we care for you, and we want to make sure that we help you make the best decisions you can, knowing that these are difficult decisions. Ellen and her team are very amazing and adept at handling those very difficult situations.
Yes, and they have great relationships with a variety of lenders too, and I think that's what's also important to people who would be listening in. Because the financial resources that are needed right now are so great, and they do have great relationships, so that helps everyone when it comes to trying to field those referrals to the places that can make a difference. So I appreciate that. And then thinking about things you mentioned, like new programs, the Google certificate being one of them, you know, what are some words of advice that you have for employers or dislocated employees right now if they are trying to get that new skill or skill up or do business in a different way?
For the dislocated employee, our recommendation is that they go through the formal process with Arizona at Work, Pima County. That's where you can immediately secure potentially some funding. And I know that Dan's probably going to address some of that. So I'll defer to him on the specifics of that. But that is usually our recommendation when working with somebody, and equally work with our team at the same time. We actually have team embedded in Pima County, One Stop Arizona at Work, Pima County, so that we can braid funding opportunities where applicable. So if they're a veteran, they will be entitled to veterans funding plus federal financial aid, plus the WIOA dollars that are available to them as dislocated workers. And we're able to work that in such a way to maximize resources to serve as many of these individuals as possible. And that's more important than ever before. For the employer, it is very tempting right now to cut expenses, and we don't decry anybody of those difficult decisions. But oftentimes the employer supported resources for training, once we start back, not right now, but once we start back on this uptick, is to keep in mind that many of our workers rely on their employers for those dollars for increased education and training. And as labor pools are not necessarily growing, even on the upside of this, then we will need to be working with employers to help build their talent bench from within, and we can certainly work with them to do that.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ian. There's a lot of work being done, and it's phenomenal, the response that we're getting from all of our community partners, and you're one of those. So I appreciate your taking the time to share today. And it was a perfect segue, right, to our Pima One Stop folks in Arizona at work. Dan Sullivan was on the line with us and has a family emergency and had to step away. So well wishes for him. I know he's got to deal with something quickly, but as luck would have it, not luck, everyone's prepared here, right? Niels Ehrman is on the line and is certainly the same and great resource for Pima County One Stop with all of the experience behind him in that. So I'm going to let Niels talk a little bit from that perspective and share an update, Niels, would you, on Pima One Stop, the trends you're seeing right now in a situation where, for example, we know we've seen statewide those numbers of going up to upwards of 350,000 initial claims for unemployment in the last 4 weeks. So I'd like to hear from you, a little bit about what you're doing here locally. How can people continue to plug in? Niels? And I'm going to make sure you have the ability to control as a panelist. So you should have, I have you unmuted. And it's up to you if you want to use video. I have you unmuted. Or you can send me a message if you're having a challenge. Send me a chat message and we'll figure it out. I know. Nothing like last minute challenges and changes, but we understand it for sure. He is having a little difficulty. All right, so, but while he figures that out, I'll flip over to Marisol. I would like to introduce you to really a new team member for us who is going to help us even do further outreach. Marisol Flores-Aguirre is a small business owner, lecturer, and mentor in residence at the Center of Entrepreneurship at the University of Arizona. And she was previously, you may recall, with the Ward 1 office, of course, where when our mayor was then council member. So many of you may have interfaced with her as legislative director there. She has also served as executive director of the YWCA's Micro Business Advancement Center, and she has spent 10 years in small business herself, having worked as director of media and promotions for REA Media, a family-owned company that's a leader in cross-border marketing and business development. So again, she's very well known in the business community, especially among our Spanish-speaking businesses and entrepreneurs. So that's the reason that we brought her on to assist our efforts. And I will let her share a little bit about her plans to do that and share some ways that we can do better in reaching this specific segment of our business community that is so very important here in Tucson. Marisol?
Thank you, Barbara. Hi, buenas tardes to everybody on the line. I see there's quite a few folks, 90 folks taking time out of their day to come and use this as a resource. Thank you to Ian for everything that you shared in terms of Pima County. I was looking at some of the panel or some of the folks that were on the line, and it was nice to see some familiar faces from some of the resource partners in town. As Barbara mentioned, really the work that the Economic Initiatives team brought me on to help support is as a complement to all of the work that they've been doing for the last, I don't know, it seems like a really long time now, right? 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 80 years. It feels so long in this pandemic. And so really it's meant to complement that work. As Barbara mentioned, I'm focusing specifically on Spanish-speaking business owners. So primarily these folks who either are monolingual Spanish speakers or bilingual speakers, but prefer to receive their information and their news in Spanish. We've been working really diligently. I have been on the team now for a total of 7 days. So it feels like a lot longer, but super excited when we hit the ground running. So we have developed a 45-day plan tentatively, and we're executing that plan, everything from connecting resource partners, like a lot of the ones that are on the phone, really folks that are on the ground, whether it's small business coaching, whether it's providing them access to capital, lending resources, webinars and tutorials on what they can do themselves to really feel engaged and proactive in navigating these changes. We're linking folks to y'all and folks that have those needs. We're working really hard to ensure that those resources are available, that people know about them, that they know how to access them. And so that's one of the first things that we set out to do, was really making sure that all of these amazing resources that have been put out there are inclusive of different parts of our community. And so that's one of the things that we've been really running quickly on. We know that there's a lot of really incredible lending partners out there. For example, I know that with the challenges in terms of access to capital, there's a lot of questions about the SBA rollout and all of the money that has come through and is now been dispersed. And as we're waiting for that next wave of resources, making sure that people know how to access those resources. And so one of the amazing things about Barbra's team is that, they were planning similar to what Pima County was planning in terms of looking ahead of the curve and what are those needs that the community has. And so they had already in place some business navigators, an entire team of business navigators really meant to help the city of Tucson answer a lot of those most pressing questions. And so that's one of the tools that we have really been driving the small business community towards, because that is the first stop that people can use to access the many resources that Tucson offers. And so for those of y'all that don't have that number, 837-4100, 837-4100 is that small business helpline. There's folks that are bilingual that are able to talk to you in English and Spanish. And really it's meant to connect folks to the incredible resources that exist in Tucson. And so we have a series of roundtable conversations and webinars as well that will be rolled out in the coming weeks to understand really the pain points that could be unique to that community. And so under the economic initiatives team, that's a role that I'm playing in supporting Tucson. So I'm really excited to be a part of it. I know that there are so many resource partners out there that are wanting and able and have capacity to support. And so really it's part of our mission to make sure that they're getting that support.
Fantastic. And that's exactly it. It was my hope that we really do reach people where they're at, right? And there may be people who have not been in touch with us, have not been on a webinar or made a phone call even, but they're still out there and they're concerned or they're frustrated, they're afraid, and they really, just haven't felt comfortable reaching out, right? So we want to find a way to make sure that we take away any of those barriers and that we create a space for them to be able to communicate with us openly, get the information they need in a way that they need it, right? I think that's key. And I know there are resource partners on our webinar today that you'll be interfacing with, or that they may need some help in Spanish. And that's where I was thinking it'd be great to be able to connect you and really make your services available to our resource partners who need that Spanish language opportunity.
Absolutely. Or if there's resource partners on the line that we haven't connected with yet, let's definitely connect because we know that so many communities are organizing themselves through mutual aid and through other ways. And so the city of Tucson just wants to be one more spoke in that wheel to be able to make sure that they're getting access to the support that they need, especially because what we're finding is that so many of our small businesses in general, but especially our Spanish-speaking small business owners, have a lot of those essential workers. And so we want to make sure that they feel supported, both as business owners and empowered as business owners, but in terms of ensuring safety for their workers as well, in terms of getting resources to them that they do need. Whether it's, like I said, there's some things as easy as, how do I create a social media page? How am I creating a website? What can I do right now to make my business go virtual? Which is something that they hadn't thought about before. Maybe they wanted to, but didn't ever seem to find the time. And there's partners out there that we know that can help assist with that. We know that there's access to capital lenders out there that are doing loans at 1% interest. I mean, 1% interest, and sometimes completely forgivable if it's invested where it's supposed to be invested in terms of the criteria of the loan. Those kinds of resources are critical to small business owners. And so we want to make sure that if there are small business owners today, I know there's small business owners on the line, that we can get you connected where you need to be, and where you feel the most comfortable.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you very much. Stay with us. We're going to see if we can get Neil's mic to work. Let's hear it.
Am I on?
You are on.
Oh, it's my lucky day.
Hooray.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, absolutely. So let's go back. Let's talk a little bit now about what you're doing at Pima One Stop, and give us that flavor of what's happening there, and share what resources you have and what you're seeing and what you have to offer for both employers and employees. Niels?
So I would start out with our individual workers who've been laid off or furloughed from their businesses. Obviously, none of us, everybody else on the webinar and everyone we've talked to in the community have ever seen anything like this. So the amount of volume coming through is pretty large. And one of those that really happened overnight. I mean, it just literally someone turned off the light switch. And so kudos to our teams within our Pima County's Community Services Employment Training. They have really come to the table trying to figure out how to deliver services as quickly as possible, adapt the way we do business. So we're doing a lot of our business on the phone. So I want to give you one phone number to start with, which is area code 520-724-5735. And that is our hotline number for anyone who's been furloughed or laid off, who has any questions regarding what to do next, unemployment insurance, finding another position in the meantime, those sorts of things, and any of the other services that we may provide. So Pima County's Community Services Employment Training not only is, on the workforce development side and finding people work and finding people training to deal with their careers. Obviously, right now, there are a lot of people that really just want to hunker down at home with their families. Their kids are out of school, and we get that. We want to enroll them all so that when things change at that point and they are ready to come in to see us and work with us, we're already prepared to bring them in. We're also learning how to do and deliver as many possible services as we can online. Obviously, it's drinking through a fire hose, as everybody can imagine today. So we're doing a lot of that work. So a lot of the work we're doing is referring on the DES, the unemployment side. That's really not our main line of business. And so it's a frustrating issue right now because their business went from 0 to a bazillion, literally, and they were not prepared for the amount of volume. And they are doing the best they possibly can. On our side, we are trying to ascertain from individuals who are checking in with us whether they want to go to work or not. And if they do, we are out there in the market looking for positions for some of these folks. And we know on our business services side that we're constantly talking to industry partners, and there are a couple of industry sectors that are still employing people. And so we're trying to make that match. So obviously a lot of folks have heard about the grocery industry and some of the logistics supply chain industry and the trucking industry. The construction industry is still hiring. And they're happy to bring in people who have moderate skills and be able to bring them up. And the healthcare industry is desperate, but there are various sectors of the healthcare industry that need different kinds of staffing. So it's us working with Pima County's Emergency Operations Center. We're getting a lot of calls from healthcare organizations trying to find talent, and we're trying to make that match for them. And then inside our own house, we have our Community Action Agency, and the Community Action Agency provides a lot of assistance on rental assistance and utility assistance and those sorts of things. So really, literally standing up overnight as much as we can, the biggest, widest safety net we can for the workforce here in Pima County while we start to move forward. On the employer side, unfortunately, employers had to make decisions like within a couple hours. And so we find that there were a lot of layoffs, and then the employer was coming back to us. And typically this is rapid response for our team. It's something we do when we have forewarning. We can go in with a whole crew of people and provide the service. We have now put together some packages. So the first thing we do is we email out those packages to the employer and follow up with them to see if they understand the documents that we sent, for them to share it with their folks. And then we're here to guide them through the process. We're finding that a lot of employers are extremely concerned about their staff and feel really bad about what they had to do, but conditions are what they are. And they are supplying us with names, backgrounds, in terms of job descriptions, that sort of thing, so that we can be of assistance and help those individual companies guide their employees out there. So we're not getting a lot of direct contact with those folks, or we're directing them into our telephone line to start to access services.
That's fantastic. I'm curious, and I think Ian spoke to this as well, but the volume of activity that you're seeing, how have you all been able to navigate that? Have you been able to staff up to handle the number of calls and the volume of services that have been requested?
The answer is yes, we have to. That's one. Obviously, number two, there were folks in our organization that needed to go telecommute for whatever issues those are that met the Pima County's guidelines. But there were plenty of folks that were coming to work every day and working out of our centers, and our folks telecommuting. But because the library system in Pima County furloughed a lot of their staff, because the libraries closed down, we were able to access a lot of their staff and their librarians to come in and work with our teams. So they've become a kind of they're a force multiplier right now for us. And obviously they're trained in information gathering and dissemination. And so they're very good at this sort of thing. So it's been very, very helpful to the work that we're doing.
Fantastic. So, and there are some questions starting to come in. So, and Niels, I would ask you if you can put the Pima one-stop hotline phone number in the chat. That would be extremely helpful. I think folks have asked about that, so that way it would be there. There are some questions, and I know I see a few folks in the attendee lineup that might also be able to help, so I will look at that as an option. But one of the thoughts is from small business that have applied for some of the grants already, or the loan programs from SBA, in particular the EIDL, the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan. They filed their paperwork. They haven't yet maybe had any feedback. I see Ellen Curtin on the line, and I'm going to unmute her so that maybe she also might have some some feedback on some of these things. I know that one of the things our office received is an email from Senator Sinema's office that said she would be happy to have her folks do a search on the individual small business case that has applied for certain loans. And so we've got that. I'm going to ask, I believe I have Kevin Burke that is also a participant, and he's on our team. I'm going to ask him to find that email for Senator Sinema and put that in the chat room, so we can have that for you, because that is available to you so that they can, on behalf of you in Washington, D.C., go ahead and be checking the status of your application. So I know that's a very important concern right now. The other question was a COVID IRS business tax question. They're looking for the right expert on this, specifically running payroll and laid off employees, and projecting no profit this year. They want to know, if I rehire an employee and restart payroll and still run a loss with my S Corp, am I able to apply the 50% tax credit as a pass-through credit to my 1040, since my K-1 will be negative? See, that's a very technical question for a tax expert. So again, happy to let someone respond and let me know among you if you have an interest in that. Otherwise, what we'll do is, I've got the name here. So Ross, I can always follow up with you and connect you to someone who could answer that. But I appreciate that, because these questions are on the minds of everyone. So again, sometimes you see a question and you were thinking, I really could identify with that. I'd love to have an answer to that as well. I see Neil's posted the dislocated worker hotline. That's 520-724-5735. And that's, again, because we have several people on the phone that are not able to view the chat room. So again, 520-724-5735. So that is a number to call. And then here it is. Thank you, Marisol. The number for you, the email for you, I should say, to Senator Sinema's office is casework@sinema.senate.gov. And her name is spelled S-I-N-E-M-A. So casework@sinema.senate.gov, and you should include your loan reference number and the name of the listed signatory. So let them know what loans you've applied for, maybe how long ago, and let them try to follow up. Neil's also posted the Pima County Utility Rental and Mortgage Assistance Hotline, and that's 520-724-2667. So again, 724-2667. So that's great. And then if you are having the challenge and unfortunate decision of laying off employees, you can talk to Pima County Business Services Outreach Team about that, and they can assist you. 520-724-3733. And that number is also in the chat box. So I think these are really important things. I have heard from some businesses that they are starting to see some of the loans fund, the federal loan programs that they applied for, starting to see some monies coming down, and so that's good. What I do want to tell you about is that we'll be talking to council tomorrow about enhancing our local funding for direct loans, and to supplement where the PPP program is, and hopefully Congress chooses to refund that, and I really do think they will. So you're seeing some news headlines on that could be happening actually as we speak. Actually, let's see, CARES Act Readiness Program, great resource on preparing for second round of PPP. That's coming from Victor in the chat room. So yeah, we do expect the second round to come, and that will make, again, as Marisol mentioned, those 1% loans for PPP and being forgivable. That's almost like, again, a free opportunity there, right, to help cover those employees that are trying to keep on, and that's so important. So,
hey, Barbara, if I can just jump in really quick, because I think Victor raised a good, just top of mind, is that for folks who did apply for the PPP loans and they haven't heard back yet, double check with whoever you applied with through your bank and your lending institution. Just because the resources have been exhausted through Congress at this time doesn't mean that your bank has distributed all the funds that there are. So if you did apply, make sure that you're following up on those applications just to find out where you are in the queue. Maybe they needed some more information from you, but be proactive in that way. And I know it's one other thing that you have to do on top of all the things that you're doing, but this is a really important resource that could really make, obviously, the greatest impact for you in the short and long term.
That's great. Fantastic. And then I think, Niels, it'd be good to hear, as you you mentioned in the chat room about the businesses that are currently hiring and the job leads that would be helpful if they were sent to businessservices@pima.gov, your email. Talk a little bit about that in terms of those who do have some positions that they need to fill or they had to staff up in a certain way. What are you seeing, and what's the importance of having those job leads gathered together at your place?
So thank you for the opportunity. A couple things. We provide a local service. There are other services with the Arizona Job Connection and the pipeline programs or whatever it is. But we've got a list of 8,000 people that we send out constant contact to. We typically would do it once a week. We're now doing it 2 and 3 times a week because and it's kind of a local service, because we have a lot of smaller shops and local businesses that are looking for talent. And so this is just another way for us to be able to support that. So right now, they come in, we put them into constant contact, and then we email out constant contact. I think we're doing it 2 times a week now. Trying to get the word out to our contacts, and that is everybody from individuals who've come in to use the services of Pima County One Stop and have been clients, to client agencies who are our partners, who have job developers and case managers working out there who are working with their clients, and then from other businesses that are out there. So this is just another opportunity for local businesses to be able to have a local place to be able to deliver their information in real time.
And that's so important. So I appreciate that. There was a question here: are the employee-facing packages available for furloughed staff as well as laid-off staff?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So it looks like, and maybe you mentioned some packages for maybe employers.
Oh, they're for everybody. So typically in the layoff world, layoff is separated from the term furlough. But in this current situation, furlough and layoff is the same thing. Companies' intent to bring somebody back, they would furlough them. But right now, everyone intends to bring their staff back, but then it'll depend on how they can come back online and what it's going to take for them to go back to regular business. So furloughed employees may decide to take part-time work out there. They're going to collect some unemployment, that sort of thing. And so the information's for anybody and everybody whose livelihood was impacted by COVID-19.
That's great. And so hopefully that answers the question. I would imagine if someone wants to follow up, they can again call you all directly. And
we would welcome it.
And get the specifics. Okay, so there's another question about that status of the EIDL. If they're in the queue, basically, do they stay in the queue? How does that work? And Marisol, you had something to add on that. Do you want to share a process? And unmute yourself.
Yeah. Sorry, I have the habit of just starting to talk. Yeah, so for EIDL questions, I know that one has been particularly nebulous. You kind of just submitted this one-page application and then got a confirmation and nothing else. But there is a hotline number that you can call. It's 1-800-659-2955. I will put that in the chat box in a second, but you can use that to call and find out the status of your EIDL application. So if you'll contact them directly, they'll be able to answer that, hopefully sooner rather than later. But you're not alone in that. And there's a number here that I'm putting into the chat window, and you can call directly.
I'm sure people are wondering, how long do they wait when you make a phone call like that? Do you know?
You know, that's the hard one, right? I know that in a couple of instances when I've called some of the resource partners at the national level, it's sometimes a pretty lengthy wait, as you can imagine. Sometimes they will take your number and you can just kind of go about your day and they'll call you back. But it really varies. And unfortunately, I don't have what you can kind of standard wait time. But I know that because so many folks are furloughed or working from home, even like the IRS isn't taking a lot of those phone calls. Yeah, we waited an hour both times. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty standard, unfortunately.
Barbara, can you hear me?
Yes, you've got some feedback though. So
Yeah. Let me,
check into that. Let me ask one other question, and I'll, there's a commercial property owner who's applied for the EIDL, actually hasn't applied for the EIDL. Are there any funds left? I don't think that program is reopening. I'm seeing a shake in the head no. So I think you would do best to pursue some of these other programs. Ellen, did you get your mic figured out?
can you hear me?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, so the EIDL is closed. So phone calls won't matter right now. We are hoping that 400 billion will be released this week from, Congress. 250 of it will be earmarked for the PPP loan. The rest is going to be for hospitals and some other things. So there are so many people in the queue. It's almost expected that just being able to fund those. Part of the reason is a lot of the larger companies went in first and the loans went up to $10 million. So there was a company today that there were 3 major restaurant chains that went in and used $40 million alone. So think about that multiplied across the country. So I think right now when the funds are released, we hope midweek, anyone who's in the queue and got approved got a number. That's New York. And with that number, then as soon as the money's available, they can go into documentation and they fund within 24 hours. So if folks have been in there for a couple of weeks, it's because there were so many before in the queue. And so they just need to be patient. New people are going in and applying, but it's going to be all a matter of how far those funds will go. So phone has not been the best way to get in touch. They just don't have people to man phones to do this. I would say too that the small and medium banks have done an amazing job. The bigger banks, because of the sheer volume, have been slower in the process. Wells Fargo came on kind of late, as an example. So we're working with, I myself have about 25 companies I'm working with for about $4 million all told. And my whole team is like that. So we handhold. The biggest thing is also with the SBDC is we'll be with them after to make sure they get forgiveness. It's not an automatic. There's 8 weeks, and during those 8 weeks, they have to maintain those employees. The last loan that can be made to have full 8 weeks is May 1st, which is the end of next week. So folks that have not applied need to apply and see if they can get in the queue.
Okay, which is perfect. So again, I mentioned that we're going to be enhancing that loan fund through our partners, Business Development Finance Corporation. That's the plan. So we'll let you know how that goes after tomorrow, and then definitely be reaching out, make contact, and get in the queue, as Ellen said, because timing is of the essence. There's a question about the growth. So we have other micro lenders like Growth Partners of Arizona, Community Corporation, and the activity there. And I know that they're talking to folks. I would imagine, since I didn't see them on the webinar today, that they're busy with applications. Ellen, you have a thought on that?
Yes, so there's Prestamos, which is CP, and also Dream Spring. They also have funds. There's quite a few smaller agencies. Growth Partners is a good source to get, recommended elsewhere. But there are a number of, for the smaller dollars, and they're doing their own thing. So with the CDFC, they actually have what's called Kiva Loans, and those are smaller loans, but they don't have all the requirements that the other loans have.
Yeah, which is perfect because next week we're going to talk about that. I did, and before I kind of highlight next week's webinar, I did see Carol Shaughnessy on the line, and I'm pleased to say, Carol, if you want to unmute yourself, I'm happy to have you just share for one moment or two about the webinars that our SCORE counselors have come up with, and that you're starting on Wednesday, because, and I think even Marisol mentioned how important it is to get that that digital awareness and digital business model into your platform as quickly as possible. And Carol, I think your webinars are going to help with that.
I certainly hope so. Thanks for the opportunity to present those. They're being offered in English as well as in Spanish in 4 consecutive weeks on slightly different topics on basically how to survive all this.
Great, fantastic. So we will be sending out emails. I know you have a list that you're sending to, but those of you on this webinar will be included in that distribution list. So you should hear about those SCORE opportunities that are starting online on Wednesday. And I'm watching the chat room here. And I think Ellen gave you some great resources as well, mentioning some of our other micro lender partners. And then looks like Ross had success and got a person on that 1-800 line to
so
check.
close.
Yay, to check the status, but didn't get the information he needed. But he got through within 3.5 minutes. That's a start. Well, it's hit or miss. It gives that a new term, a new meaning again.
Yeah, and especially because that's the number listed for the SBA's EIDL. So I'm sorry, Ross, about that. That is the number that they have listed there in terms of getting support and resources. Not sure what else.
Yeah, but it's all good. We'll keep trying, and thanks for letting us know how it's happening for you out there, because that helps inform all of us. So that's exactly the kind of dialogue that we all need to share together. And then I think since we are getting close to time, if there are any other questions, shoot those my way here. Ellen, it looks like you've got a webinar coming up on surviving this pandemic. Feel free to include a link to that in the chat box, or make sure again that you send it out to us and to our all the resource partners so we can share with our list. That's how we've been so effective here in Tucson, that our community partners are all connected and we're all activating, and it's wonderful, right? It's the way it's supposed to work. And now instead of just a phone tree, we're a Zoom tree. It's amazing. It's amazing. I know, just a little light humor. Okay, so here's what you have next week. So we're going to wrap up today, but we will host our next webinar on Monday again at 3 p.m. And we will highlight some of the loan programs once again, because we think that we'll have some new opportunities for you. In addition, you'll have a chance to learn about these crowd-funded lending opportunities like Kiva, like WeFunder. And so I'm hoping that we'll have a guest on there to speak to that. I've already seen a couple of those loans funded, and it's fantastic. It's just fascinating to see how the community can support, and these organizations are pushing financial support toward them and helping create these microloan opportunities where credit history may be a challenge. You haven't been in business that long, or where credit worthiness is a challenge. You have some marks. So these are great opportunities to have a community rally around you and help you get funding. So I love that. Remember, it's our goal to keep you connected. You can always reach out directly to me and through our connecttucson.com website, or the hotline for our small business hotline, 520-837-4100. We'll have assistance in English and Spanish. We've reinforced now, and so I think that's fantastic. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter on the homepage. If you scroll down about halfway, you'll be able to add yourself so that you won't miss any of these updates. Again, let's see, I'm just reading last bit here. The phone numbers, all right, so we'll make sure if you'll review the chat box for some of those, and then we'll make sure that you see the rest of the information so that you can continue to move forward. Again, thank you to our panelists. Thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next Monday.
Thanks so much.